So a car produces 50 horsepower when it is traveling at a constant velocity of 120 kilometers an hour. Now, using that information, we want to calculate the average force on the car due to air resistance, due to the air molecules found in the air. Now, this force is commonly known as drag force. Now, let's suppose the drag force points in the opposite direction of motion. So our car is moving in the positive direction along the x-axis, and that means there is a force acting on the car that's propelling the car in the same direction as motion. And let's call that force motion. Now the drag force, the force due to air molecules, points in the opposite direction shown here. Now let's choose going this way to be positive, going that way to be negative. So because our car has constant velocity, that means it has no acceleration. So if we sum up all the forces acting on the car, that sum should equal 0. So we find that the force of motion minus force of drag is equal to 0, and we find that the force of motion is equal to the force of drag. So, in order to find the average force due to air molecules, we have to find the force creating the motion. So, let's first convert our velocity, kilometers an hour, into meters per second. So, 120 kilometers an hour times 1,000 meters per kilometer times 1 hour in 3,600 seconds, and that gives approximately 33.3 meters per second. Now, using this velocity and the power given, we can find the average force by using the equation power equals force times velocity, where velocity is this velocity we found and the force is what we want to find. Now the power, before we use horsepowers, we have to convert horsepowers into watts because this equation uses watts. So recall that 1 horsepower is equivalent to 746 watts. So we want to find how many watts are found in 50 horsepower. So we simply take 50 and multiply by 746 watts per horsepower. The HPs cancel and we're left with 37,300 watts in 50 horsepower. So now we plug in this value, this quantity, into this equation, divide both sides by the velocity 33.3 meters per second, and we're left with the following force. So 1,120 newtons is the force creating the motion, and this is equivalent to the force that the air molecules create, the drag force, but this force points in the opposite direction, so it's negative 1120 newtons.